my friends, welcome again to the greatest podcast on the planet. We're talking about two E's and a pod. My name is Eche.
I'm Emeka.
And what we're going to be discussing is a topic that is very dear to my heart. Okay. Now, what we're talking about is drill music. Okay. Drill music. Now, I'm just going to speak my piece and then you can tell me what you think. Okay. Because if you ask me, right, I personally think that drill music is one of the worst things to ever happen to the black community, right? One of the very worst things. I think it's the devil's poetry in this particular regard. Here's the thing, right? If I was the devil and I wanted to cause maximum destruction to the black community, I think, okay, what will I do? Let me get the music. Let me get a genre of music that is literally about killing young black men. Let me do that and we'll talk about, but we'll twist it because this is no longer fictional violence, Slim Shady violence, cartoony violence. We knew this wasn't happening.
Yeah.
But this is non-fiction raps. This is a documentary. This is a provocation. Locations, postcode, names. This is actually gang warfare through music, right? And people are digesting this, not in their head, bopping their heads to this like it's not a problem. Right? So that's what I'm saying. If I was the devil, personally, this would be a master plan. Genius plan. And what boggles my mind is the fact that no one's really talking about it like this. Everyone's got an excuse. It's the government. The kids don't have nothing else to do. They're just documenting their lives, man. Right? Everyone's got an excuse, but we need to actually take accountability for what's happening in the streets, because this is real funerals, real RIPs. And it's a schizophrenic situation whereby you've got young suburban white kids and urban white kids and then black kids and adults around the world. They consume the music. The person is threatening this individual, then that person dies, then you type in RIP, what a shame. Then what do you do the next day? You press play on the track, repeating the same thing. It doesn't make sense. What is it about hearing tales about young black men threatening each other, objectifying women, plaguing the community, peddling drugs? Why is that so enamoring and infatuating to folks? Why is that so fascinating? Okay, I just don't understand it. And if you ask me, if a genie said, my brother, you have unlimited wishes, what do you want to do? I think top 7, when I get to wish 7, create a world where drill didn't exist. That's me, right? That's my thoughts on this genre of music.
Yeah, I think it's a interesting topic, and the reason it's interesting is because, like you said, it feels like non-fiction to the point where it's not even glamorizing. This is just real life. We've seen the weapons, we've seen the retaliation, we've heard the music, we've heard how it's playing out on the streets. All right, but before I go into my central point, I just wanted to play devil's advocate quickly, all right? 20 years ago, the heart of grime, all right? It's not called drill, but some of the lyrics, if we're honest with ourselves,
oh yeah, for sure.
all right, were insinuating some of the same things in regards to in the wheelchair, I don't want to call no one out, but you know what I mean? It's like everybody, there was a lot of violent lyrics.
Indeed.
From that perspective. So do you think it's, obviously it's music continually evolves, all right? So when you now flash back, obviously because you was a young man during those periods, so your opinions are not formed the way it is now that you can see things from an adult perspective. So take you know, play Mr. Scrooge and go back in time for a second. Are you still having the same venom about grime music at that period where a lot of it was quite violent towards other people that looked like each other as well? So I just want to post that on you first.
No, I think that's an interesting point. And of course, I did listen to those tracks, okay? But the thing with grime is that, what was it? It's the essence of the streets, of the hood, of the ends. Gritty, right? Dirty. But there was a spectrum of situations within that framework. So I gravitated to Kano.
Yeah.
I'm listening to Sway the Sappho, right? That's who I'm listening to. Of course, there's some joints, there's some tracks, but what I'm predominating my listening to is certain particular artists, right? But there is that spectrum in there. But at the same time, going back to what you said, yes, the lyrics were violent. I agree, but there's a nuance in there in the sense that it was braggadocio, it was aggressive, it was violent, but it wasn't targeted to specific names and individuals, right? Yes, it was violent, but it was kind of blanket violence. I'm not saying it is great, but at the same time, it's not a case of, I'm actually talking about this person that lives in EA or lives in this postcode. It was a case of, okay, I'm talking violent lyrics, right? Now, from a younger perspective, I took it in, right? But now, at the ripe old age of 32, just kind of looking at this thing. Because if you strip away the beats, if you went to an open mic night and spat those lyrics, tell me that's not the devil's poetry. Strip away the beats, look at what they're saying. What is it about? Objectification, killing, but and this is the thing, right?
The art of killing.
We had the violent lyrics, but this is about killing, but not just the killing, about dancing on the grave and laughing at the fact that I've killed this person. I think there's a difference, there's a nuance in there, and the fact that this genre is called drill. What is the drill used to do? Put holes in things. So the whole genre is saying, this is what I'm about, putting holes into things. As opposed to grime, which is about, okay, this is stories from people who are from the dirt, the gritty, the grime, the estates. That's my piece.
Okay. Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I agree with what you're saying from that point of view, but I'm looking at it from a bigger picture perspective, because I know obviously drill within itself, it's every part of it is not great, and I'm not sure the value that it adds to the community from any perspective. And what happens now is the fact that there's a market for it in regards to it's now financially potentially funding those things that's now playing out on the streets, essentially. So it's like, okay, cool. Then from any perspective where they're making money, but it's not making money and let's change the message. It's adding more to the message. So as somebody that's an educator that's trying to get young people to understand their values and to understand what they can put into society. All right, so we've now gone beyond social commentators. We're now in the realm of motivating and potentially inspiring other people to now think and do the things that you do. All right. From the other side, people might say, okay, we listen to Tupac, for instance. Hit 'Em Up is one of his biggest tracks, and some of the things that he said, my 4-4, make sure all your kids don't grow. That's if we're being honest.
That's wild. That is absolutely wild.
You know, but we listen to Tupac, we listen to Nas, we listen to all of these Eazy-E's and NWAs and so on and so forth. We heard these things, but we never felt compelled to go on the streets and do certain things. So that would be the argument for some of the people from the other side in regards to these people are just commentating on their lives and so on and so forth. But from a point of ownership and being accountable for our young people, all right? I don't think the community is doing enough, all right, to condemn this particular genre, and not just this genre, but just in terms of any of those type of music that comes from within the community, full stop, regardless of whether you call it a drill, grime, or whatever, in regards to we've now normalized and desensitized that type of violence, all right? Because I come from a point of when I've been working with young people, and we now come through innocence. I've seen innocence turn into killers within the space of 6-7 years, all right? Somebody who's 10 years old that I was working with, all right? By the time they get to 16, they're knee deep into the culture of violence. This is the music that you're listening to on a consistent basis. Not to say that's what made you do this. There's obviously other factors around your life, being kicked out of education, having nothing to lose, so many different things, and environmental backgrounds as well. But what I'm saying is this aspect of the music does not help in terms of creating a mindset of a young person that now feels like, you know what, there's more that I can put into the society rather than take out. And then I think that's a problem. I think we're not doing enough to condemn that. And I guess from another perspective, people say that why do the community always come out in force when there's a racial death, for instance, either imposed by the police or somebody else that's just not from the community. And I guess the argument around that is because 9 times out of 10 there's no justice served over there. All right? Yeah. Not to say that the community is not outraged when our young brothers and sisters are killing each other here. These are not criminal masterminds. The reason why there is no level of protest from that perspective, because justice is served. Before that guy goes home and takes off his hoodies and stuff like that, he's probably been arrested. Yeah. CCTV, you're not criminal mastermind. So they've caught the person. So now 2 families are mourning. The victim and the perpetrators, in terms of from the family's perspective. So if we're looking at from the term of justice being served, a lot of the times, I'm not sure the exact percentage, but a lot of the times, a lot of these young people who are now killers will get caught. Whereas from that perspective, they're not getting caught there. What I want us to now embrace within the community is say, okay, we now need to take ownership of the standards that we are creating. Point blank and period. All right? This is no longer acceptable in terms of how has this 10-year-old gone through this process within a 6-year period, has nothing to lose, and is willing to put a blade in somebody else and not care about the consequences. All right, so what's happening? Let's continue to dissect and what's happening in that time. Is it the education system? What is going on within that period? Rather than us putting more into them in terms of these are things that we want you to be able to achieve. All right, but this path here and the glorification of, oh, I might eventually make money, but the damage that I'm doing in terms of putting this out there is potent.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot in there to unpack. And one thing you mentioned very early on is about supply and demand. Someone that needs to be addressed is these labels that are bankrolling this. They are profiting off of this destruction, right? But at the same time, they are capitalists. So they are now feeding the demand. So perhaps it's time that we stop demanding it, and then they'll realize, okay, we need to peddle something else. But if we're consuming, then they're going to continue to flog it and spread it, right? So that's one aspect. And then another aspect in terms of what you said about the standards and taking a stance and saying, this ain't acceptable. I haven't seen that kind of energy. Apart from one person, right? One rapper, Lupe Fiasco, right? One of my favorites. So he has an album called Drill Music in Zion. So he didn't just talk about it on Instagram. He named his album in that vein, and he has a track, the last track on the album. Everyone listen to that track, listen to that album, the last track on the album, right? In that, he talks about the fact that he wishes that his rapper friends were liars because they're talking about killing each other. But unfortunately, they are not liars. They're telling the truth. He wishes they were liars, okay? So I'm not seeing the kind of response from these semi-conscious individuals in the community, right? So I feel like it's a time to draw a line in the sand. Where do you stand? Are you with it or are you against it, right? Because the fence sitting, if you're sitting on the fence, for me, you're with it, right? You're either with it or you're against it. We need to do something, right? We can't just be complacent and let this thing spread, right? As you said, this ain't normal. It shouldn't be normalized. The platforms that are hosting this, the people that are commenting, there's people that make a living commenting about, oh, so-and-so died, oh yeah, this happened, and then people
the whole YouTube channel based on trauma.
There's a whole space, there's a whole economy built on that. That ain't normal.
Yeah, and when you start messing with people's potential income by talking about abolishing and things like that, because for me, it's not about telling a specific group of people your music is now banned. It's now from the ground up, how am I putting more into these young people? So this is not a route that they're going to in the first place, because we want autonomy, we want freedom of choice, do what you want. Whereas this choice is no longer what you want to do, because you see the destruction that it's having within our communities. And nobody can tell me it's not a destructive cycle of what's being put out there, essentially. Whether you call it drill, whether you call it grime, garage, or whatever, once there's a level of destruction that's being put out there, somebody's consuming it, all right? And yeah, not every single person is going to go out and do something with that particular thing, but the energy, nobody can tell me nothing. The energy that you're putting into the atmosphere for 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, that you don't have to go far to find it and listen to it. Primary school, so straight away, they are now in this mode of, I can't be disrespected. What are you talking about? You know? And when you don't have that emotional intelligence, a lot of grown men don't even have this. So we're now talking about 10, 11-year-olds, right? Where your first instance of where you feel like somebody has disrespected you is now to say, I want to end their life. There's something fundamentally wrong with that mindset. And we have to be the ones who are pioneering changing that. All right. So what's the alternative? All right. Because if you're saying, oh, they are now making money through this. All right. In the name of what? All right. Only a few people are making money from it. All right. So the few that have made money from it, good for you. But what about the devastation that has been caused based on the fact that your music is now being able to spread so far and wide, and it's almost as it can be a trance sometimes in terms of, we know how potent music is. It can lift your mood, it can reduce your mood, and all of these things that music, we know the power of music. And so once you now put that into the hands of these corporations who know that they are profiting from the lives of mainly young black men, we need to now take a stance against that and figure out how do we do better.
I'm with you, right? I'm definitely with you, okay? I feel like I've spoke my piece, right? You got anything to add?
Yeah, it will be just interesting to know what people's opinions are on this. What can we? Do you think we're too far gone? That's the question in regards to when something is as big as it is right now, and there's a lot of money engaged in it. We've now reached a pivotal point where we've reached a point of no return, as Immortal Techniques once said. If that is the case, then how do we shift? Maybe we're not trying to get back, because what are we even coming back to?
Yeah.
How do we shift it to a different direction where we are holding higher standards? Because there's more ways to make money now. There's more young millionaires than ever before. There's so many ways to become millionaires, dropshipping, YouTube. So there's so many more people making money in a legit way, and the opportunities there for so many different people if you're willing to now figure it out. So how do we now galvanize a generation so we don't have this level of trauma for the next 8-year-olds within the next 6-7 years? They are now serving life for murder.
Yeah.
How do we change that narrative? And I think it's down to all of us. We must take collective responsibility to it, because I always say this, people like to play the blame game too much. We need to now look in the mirror and take responsibility for some of these things that are happening within our communities. In regards to, yes, there are things that are outside of our control in regards to how we are policed, how the government spends their money, and so on and so forth. But okay, from the perspective of us, what are we doing to change this narrative?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. That's a great question. And the one thing that you can do that's automatically in your control, right? People often say vote with your wallets, but in this case, vote with your streams. Are you going to continue to stream the situation and then complain about the plight of the community?
But the beat is good though, isn't it?
But the beat is good, but the vibe, but the reps, right? So you need to ask yourself, am I happy with the state of the black community? Do I think Black Lives Matter? If so, am I going to continue to give the supply for these corporations, right, to continue to peddle this destructive music? If you're happy with that situation, then own it, all right? Don't be doing up RIPs, then do you, right? But the one step we can all take before we have a wider community discussion is vote with your streams. I think that's me. That's it. That's it. Cut the camera, man. I'm out here.